Thank you, Tony B, for joining us today. This is a very interesting topic for me, something that I would say, you know, it sounds fancy for me, so something I would definitely want to learn more from you. So let's start with a little bit about who is Tony B.
Well, first of all, Tony B is not fancy, so I'm going to dispel that rumor. I think what we're going to discuss today will actually be pretty straightforward. I am an agile coach. Let's see. My coaching background actually started in music, where I was a private vocal coach for quite a few years, and then I was tutoring and coaching the daughter of an IT architect on actually on her diction. She had some issues
Okay.
with her perceptibility in the classroom. She was 10 years old at the time, and because she had just come from overseas, her accent was kind of challenging for other kids to understand. And because I had done a little bit of dialogue coaching in Boston with business people and musicians as well, although primarily it was singers, I did get the odd dialogue case where someone
Okay.
wanted to work an accent. So I took on the challenge, and unbeknownst to me, I was applying some agile principles because, yeah, well, I had to read some children's books, and I started backlogging, making a list of phonemes that she was having trouble with.
Okay.
And then based on the frequency that with which they occur, I prioritize them. Gee, this one's really hard and it occurs a lot. We really got to fix that one first. So kind of an MVP approach of, I'm never going to make her accent go away entirely, but how do I help her with the intelligibility aspect? And I think what happened is that her dad, who was an IT architect, whose company was using some agile, started to notice that I was doing things like backlog. I was doing
Oh,
things like sprinting, because every week we would meet with her mother, review her progress, and make a plan for the next week. So now we have a backlog, we have a sprint, and boom, we have a product owner because her mother acted as product owner. Um,
nice.
so without me knowing, just by common sense, I was applying some of these Scrum and Agile concepts. Flash forward, ultimately he hired me at his company. He didn't own it, but he was a managing director with
Okay.
Synchron, which is an IT staffing firm. And I was brought on as a backlog administrator, which was a role they had created in a agile hybrid waterfall. It was kind of administrating user stories and features and entering them into the tool, which at that time was CA Agile Vision. So I was cutting
Okay.
and pasting from Excel into CA Agile Vision. But in the process, got very curious about this Agile thing and started really doing a lot of searching online and learning, and became quite interested. It seemed like a very interesting process. Few steps forward, the company decided to do a truer and fuller agile transformation, and I became part of an agile center of excellence, a CEO or an AEO, you might call it, an agile enablement office. And that's where I did receive my actual training. So got the CSM, the CSPO, had the tremendous privilege of studying under Lisa Atkins when she was doing the Agile Coaching Institute, Agile Coach, Agile Facilitator. She was delivering that hands-on with her partners in the company, and that was a tremendous privilege. So I did that, and eventually moved on to becoming a corporate consultant with Accenture. So with Accenture, I was doing Fortune 50 Agile transformation coaching, team level, program level, some to a lesser extent executive level, just counseling them on their application of a scaled Agile framework.
Sorry. So it's very fascinating for me, right? So your background isn't IT, right? You started with vocal coaching, right, on that side. Is that correct? For
I was a
music,
professional musician, yes.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
musician, and then you somehow you got in and you're applying all the principles and it landed you, now today you are I would consider you a successful agile coach consultant today. I mean, that's
Well,
that's how I
thanks. I'll
see
take
you, right? So that's very fascinating to me, but that's just a different, I would say different. I just want to point this out that for most people that are watching this, is that to become a Scrum Master or coach, this is another example where you do not need to have the IT background. Is that correct? I mean, that's
Well, with all respect to technical people, um, that's a different mindset. Solving technical problems is a
right.
different mindset. It's a valuable mindset. Without the technical people, we wouldn't have jobs. The
Absolutely.
coach looks at the broader patterns and interactions and asks, is there a more effective or more efficient way for all of these people to interact with one another. And that's where
Mm-hmm.
Scrum and other frameworks come in handy, and the agile principles and a lot of other concepts from other fields like organizational psychology come in. And so, yes, no technical background, but the deepest respect for technical people. What we work on is how well does the system as a whole integrate, and it's a human system. So with my background as a school teacher, as an entertainer, I understand, or maybe have an intuition about how people interact, being in bands, coaching individuals. It's sideways, it's in through the side door, but it's in the same space. So yes, that is my background. Funny enough, I was a small business owner, and I had a DJ business where we would do weddings,
Mm-hmm.
catering events, not nightclub DJing. But every time I got done with a gig, I would sit down in the car with a big, boring yellow legal pad, and I would make 2 columns: what went well, what didn't go well. This is well before I learned anything of agile or retrospecting. It was just common sense. How do I improve my business performance? I do it by creating processes that enable the next gig to be better than the last one, and better still. And that's how you get word of mouth. So I would do what went well, what didn't go well, and what will I do differently. And I did that for about half an hour before I drove home. So
Nice.
that's an example of applying agile without even knowing agile. So it's just common sense.
So, so I think the one of the things is that you had, we had a conversation and you had mentioned this thing called 6 Ps. So let's get
Oh,
into that.
yes.
What
Okay.
is this 6 Ps? I mean, 6 Ps as in the piece that we eat, or what is 6 Ps?
Okay. One of the things I observed in Agile is that one of the greatest losses of productivity and strategic and technical progress is the failure of meetings. I would see very smart people go into meetings, go down rabbit holes, no action items at the end of the meeting. One person dominates, everybody else rolls their eyes and buries their head in their laptop. And before you know it, the meeting's over. People go their separate ways and wonder why they just wasted an hour or two. So I started to observe that meetings were big causes of waste. And certainly in Scrum, where we have the ceremonies, if those ceremonies go poorly, you've just wasted some productive coding time and testing time and technical time, right? And one
Mm-hmm.
of the beefs a lot of technical teams have is they feel like the meetings themselves are wasteful. And one of the first meetings to go out the door is the retrospective, right? We see this very commonly. So it has to do with the effectiveness, creativity, and intuition of the Scrum Master in making those meetings as productive and exciting and meaningful as possible. Where that's lacking, it's just another meeting, and people start to abandon them because they think they're wasteful.
Right.
Credit to Lisa and her organization. When I got my ACI Agile Facilitator
Mm-hmm.
certification, it made me very, very interested in that aspect of my application of Agile. Is how can I make meetings truly
Mm-hmm.
engaging, productive, and even entertaining for the participants. So I started to focus my delivery on how well I facilitate meetings and how well I can teach other Scrum Masters to facilitate meetings. And so I took a just stronger interest in meetings. My current interest now is in more coaching from a coactive and or perspective. But at that time, some 6, 7 years ago, my real focus was being really, really good at meetings and helping others get really, really good at meetings. And at my company, not the company I worked at in Nashville, I kind of became a go-to guy for facilitating meetings. I would meet with stakeholders, capture their problem statements, assemble an agenda, bring stakeholders together, do whiteboarding, do post-its, and really get divergent departments to agree on particular new processes or policies or solving problems. And it became very rewarding to help people resolve conflicts and create together in meetings. And this is obviously pre-COVID. This is some 5, 6 years ago in live settings. So the 6 Ps was, I noticed that I run meetings very effectively. And I thought, okay, well, that's kind of not fair. What is it that I do that makes these things work so well? Obviously, borrowing from the meeting body of language, of knowledge. I didn't create this. There's a lot of, there's a body of knowledge out there in meeting facilitation. But what are the tricks that I use most effectively? And I came up with 6 Ps. And the way that happened is I was driving to a client, and I was going to help the release train engineer in SAFe, that's kind of Scrum's master, going to help him with some of the meetings he was having trouble with. And it was a 2-hour drive to the client, so I had time to think about what I would discuss. And it occurred to me that a meeting won't be successful if it doesn't have a purpose. But yeah, you have to have a really strong purpose. And I'm driving along thinking, you know, it also needs a plan. Isn't the agenda a plan? I got purpose and plan. And then I thought, well, it needs the right participants. And then I got 3 P's. I thought, wait a minute, this is too easy. So I thought to myself, without forcing this mnemonic, let me be honest about what are all the qualities of a good meeting. And it did turn out that there were 3 more P's waiting for me. That made things very easy and very memorable. And so once I got the 6 P's down, then I could elaborate on them. And I've been teaching training classes on the 6 P's for about 5 years now.
Nice.
And people find it I had one person, in fact, it was this release train engineer, tell me it was the most powerful thing he had learned in his career. And that's like a 15-year career. He says, I wish I knew this 15 years ago, because so much time goes into ineffective meetings.
Even for me, right? I would say, just remembering it and be able to use it is powerful, right?
Sure.
What I like about it is that, it's something that I can easily remember. It's 6 P's, right?
Yeah.
So you talk about the first 3 P's, correct?
Yeah, allow me to go into some detail.
Yeah.
You can create a meeting using the 6 P's as your guideline, and I strongly encourage people to do so. And you can monitor an ongoing meeting that's going off the rails by saying, which of these 6 P's is failing right now?
Mm-hmm.
And then taking action to correct it if you can in a moment.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go over to 6 P's real quick. The first P is purpose. Okay. How many times do you receive an invite and there's no stated purpose? Mm-hmm. Not even a summary statement, nothing. Okay. Well, if there's no purpose, how can you achieve anything? There's no goal. Yep. Once you put people together in a room with no goal, nothing's going to happen. So the first is clearly stating the purpose. And in the workshop I run, I have people think of a meeting that went terribly wrong, or a meeting coming up that they want to be well prepared for as a facilitator. And I ask them, for the meeting that went terribly wrong, what should the purpose have been based on what evolved? Or for the meeting coming up, to make it really focused, what exactly are you trying to solve? What's your purpose? So the purpose often includes a problem statement. So you have to have a clear purpose and you have to state it. So your meeting invite should have a purpose. And you put purpose, hyphen or colon, and then what it is. And my rule for people who feel like they're spending too much time in meetings is stop accepting meetings with no purpose. Your time is valuable. Why are you letting other people waste your time? So the initial rule is, if a meeting has no purpose, reject it or accept it tentatively, and somehow respectfully but firmly ask that meeting sponsor to tell you the purpose. Hey, on a sideline, on Teams, on a email, hey, what exactly is this meeting for? You'd be surprised. You'd be doing them a favor if they haven't thought it through themselves.
Or
they have no idea. They're just hoping something cool will happen when they bring a lot of people into a room, in which case they're wasting your time. So that's the first P. The second P is plan.
Okay.
How many meeting invites do you get with no agenda? What's the point of having a purpose if we don't have a collective plan to get there? It obviously is going to go down rabbit holes. It's obviously going to be unproductive. So you need an agenda. And that's just going to be the high level talking points or decision points or data points that need to be addressed, right? Okay. And then, of course, what we learn from Scrum particularly, but Agile in general, is time boxing. Don't just throw a bunch of stuff there if you don't have some kind of estimate as to whether it's possible or not. So then you time box each of those topics. Obviously, it's an estimate, just like in story pointing. Doesn't have to be exact. You can tell by how difficult or complex or how many dependencies or risks there are with the topic that it might take less or more time. So put a time box on it. You can flex the time box as you go, but not having one gives the meeting no discipline. So let's say one of the biggest complaints on meetings is that people go on and on and on off topic, right? Yeah. How do you pull them back on topic if there's no map to say, hey, you are here and you're 5 miles west of where you're supposed to be? The agenda is what tells you that. One of the things facilitators and Scrum Masters have difficulty with is getting higher ranking people to reel it in and get back on topic. They don't want to offend. They don't
Right.
want to be disciplined. If you have the agenda, you can pause that person and say, excuse me, just want to remind everyone that we're on topic number 2, and we only have 5 minutes left on topic number 2. So once you have that agenda, you publish it with the time boxes, and that becomes something that automatically disciplines people. Just them knowing where they are in the meeting, most people will back off and avoid spinning the meeting out of control. But the 1 or 2 people who do can be gently pointed back to the time box agenda and reminded that this is not what we, and then you can, of course, parking lot. This is not what we were supposed to touch on now. If you don't mind, I'm going to put that topic on the parking lot. And if we have time at the end of the meeting, we'll get to it. But for now, I'm going to pull us all back to the agenda.
Now,
And then that's the,
would you go over that agenda or your plan at the beginning of the meeting?
absolutely.
Okay, cool.
Absolutely. If you don't do that first, then you lose your I would say your authority or clarity when you do pull people back. This is
Okay.
what people are afraid of. They're afraid of the social risk of correcting people. When you have a time box agenda that's in front of everybody, it dramatically reduces the social and political risk. The other thing to put at the top, which of the agenda, would be rules of engagement.
Okay.
Basic rules are really worth mentioning, like team agreements, like
Right.
don't
Yep.
interrupt anyone. I like putting a time box on comments. No one speaks for more than a minute or 2. You decide what the flow of the meeting should be, right? 1 or 2 minute time box. You could also, I like using a rule that no one speaks twice until everyone speaks once. That reminds those who are more talkative to, yeah, we want to hear from you, but please give everyone else a chance as well.
I like that.
So that's something also to publish at the top of the
Okay.
meeting in the agenda.
Okay.
And I don't ask people if they agree with that. I ask them if they disagree. Does
Okay.
anyone disagree with our rules of engagement? Nobody's going to disagree with that because it's basic common courtesy, right?
Okay.
Then you ask, does anyone disagree with our time box agenda? This is good because there may be some useful changes that can be discovered at the beginning of the meeting, and then you can insert them and change the agenda. You basically want everyone to agree on the agenda. So in that case, I do invite comments if somebody feels there's a more productive question to ask or topic to be considered. But once those discussions quickly occur and there's a quick vote, then, okay, as I understand, we're all going to go with this agenda. Is that correct? And when everybody nods their heads, now you as a facilitator have been given the authority by that group to enforce that agenda because they've agreed to it. So now you have purpose, you've got plan, and then you have participants. One of the biggest flaws in meetings is the wrong people are in the room and the right people are not. So this is where I encourage, especially if the meeting is particularly on a difficult or complex topic, I encourage people to do a RACI chart. It only takes a few minutes before the meeting. Responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. Who's responsible for contributing to the meeting? Who's responsible for problem solving or brainstorming? Who's accountable? In some cases, a decision is going to be made that needs some organizational authority or a stamp on it. So who's accountable for the decision? They may be one and the same, but at least give it some consideration. Let's say you're trying to make a policy change or a process change, and you think you have the best solution. If the person who owns that system or that process is not present to give it a thumbs up, now you have to have another meeting to present it to them. Why not bring it all together? So if there's an accountability for a major decision that requires organizational authority, and at least you're towards the end of the process of brainstorming, bring that person in to make a decision on the spot. It just saves you further communication cycles. So that's your accountable, you're responsible. Then you have C, you're consulted. These are your experts on whatever. These are the people whose opinions will be asked during the meeting. Their input will be needed, right? Here's where the weakest link is: informed. Too often meetings get forwarded and a lot of people attend who are neither responsible, accountable, nor consulted. They're not experts. And they either gobble up meeting time, multitasking and being a distraction, or they insert questions or comments that really aren't informed enough or relevant enough to the topic. So I always say, ditch your informed. The only meeting where you need informed people are like big town halls or team meetings where broad issues are going to be disseminated just for information only, and that's the main means of disseminating it, sure. In a town hall, everyone's informed, right? But if you're problem solving or designing or planning or doing any kind of more tactical activity, avoid the informs. Similarly, if you're invited to meetings and you're not asked to contribute, you're not explicitly asked, Richard, we need your input on topic number 3. Can you prepare something for us? Or you're not a decision maker. If you're just informed, you might want to also not accept that meeting and just read the minutes. I can't attend this meeting. Can you please send me the minutes?
Okay.
Right?
So
Why
you
should
put
you? Go
so
ahead.
you kind of put it onto even the people, the person that's receiving the email, right? They just got forwarded. So you want it as a something that almost everybody adopted. So if my value is just to be informed, that I should not accept it. That's what you're saying right here.
You don't accept calls from telemarketers, do you? You don't
No,
like your time being
absolutely.
wasted.
Yep.
And the thing is, people mean well. Oh, gee, let's not leave Richard out. We got to
Right.
make sure nonsense. If they're just brainstorming or problem solving or designing,
Yeah.
you just need to know the final conclusion of that, right? As long
Yep.
as you're not consulted, why do you have to get involved in observing their process? You don't. So yes, if you're informed, ask for the minutes of meeting or decisions and leave it at that.
Okay. Nice.
Okay,
Okay.
so that's the participants. That's 3 P's.
Yep.
The next P goes to preparation, and that just
Okay.
naturally means getting your technology set up, getting your data queued up. Don't be fudging through Jira trying to find a story. If you're using Jira, for example, for your storyboard, have it all up, ready to go, pre-filtered for the first discussion, just ready to go. That honors people's time and makes sure that we're as productive as possible. But in the olden days, pre-COVID, and hopefully we'll have good post-COVID days, making sure your room has the right number of chairs,
Yep.
the right lighting, even the right temperature, the right boards and technologies, pens, papers, markers, Post-its, all that kind of usual stuff, because you don't want to be scrambling during the meeting to pull that all together. So preparation.
Okay.
And preparation means creating a pre-flight checklist. I'm going to need this, that. Again, not leaving it to chance. Okay. So then you go to performance. This is the facilitation piece that often gets missed. If no one in the meeting is responsible for the meeting, it can go haywire. A truly purely democratic meeting has a lot of risks. It helps to have a Scrum Master, a Scrum of Scrums Master, an external facilitator, somebody watching the agenda, listening to the discussion, summarizing agreement points, because people will everyone's eager to talk. And well, not everyone, but many people are eager to talk, right? So that's where you get people talking past each other.
Right.
Somebody said something, and then I'm going to repeat half of what they said in my own words. Well, now we just doubled the time it takes to consume that one idea, right? So if you have somebody who's overseeing it, they can politely interrupt that person and say, hey, Joe, it sounds like you're agreeing with Charlie, aren't you? And then Joe can nod his head. Yep, great. So Joe agrees with Charlie. Anybody else? You can try to drive it to a vote or a consensus real quick so that we don't have to hear the same story 10 times. So P for performance is actual facilitation. And this came about because I found that Scrum Masters I was coaching would run their ceremonies with their head in their laptop, updating Jira or version 1 or whatever the tool was. They would spend all their time looking down, updating stuff, moving stuff, and not noticing that half the team isn't paying attention. 2 people are on their phone, 1 person's distracted. So my rule was eyes up, out of your laptop, projected on a screen so that everybody's looking at the same thing at the same time. That's a performance issue. How well are we performing? And the metaphor I use in the PowerPoint deck I've created for the workshop is a conductor. The conductor isn't playing any music. The musicians are playing the music. The conductor is playing the orchestra. That's a strange metaphor.
Yeah.
They're not blowing into an instrument. They're not, strumming or anything or banging on anything. They're conducting the people who are making the music. And that's how I see facilitation. A good facilitator is conducting the people who are playing the music in the meeting. But if nobody's conducting them, they're going to be playing in different keys and different tempos, and it's going to sound awful. And that's the power of facilitation. So certainly Scrum Masters will be very well study facilitation as a specific professional discipline. There's obviously training in facilitation that can be found. I did it through Agile Coaching Institute and it was fabulous. But don't just trust your reading in Scrum. There's a practical skill in facilitation that takes practice and guidelines, and just dig into that field of meeting facilitation. As many tricks as you can to make your meetings productive. That's the performance part.
Okay.
So, the final P is prize. How many times do you walk out of a meeting and you throw your hands up and go, what did we just do? Did we make a decision? No conclusion. So the prize circles back to the purpose. At the end of the meeting, allow 5 or 10 minutes to review, did we achieve our purpose? Take a vote. Hey, how does everyone feel about this meeting? Are we satisfied with our conclusion? If not, obviously you can retrospect for the next meeting. But leaving a meeting with no conclusion, it's not productive. So you should have obviously action items, if there are any action items, right? Decisions should be captured, next steps, that kind of stuff. And then just an overall retro on, is there anything we could do to make these meetings better? Is there anything you want more of, less of, that kind of thing? That's that final P of prize, so that you have conclusion. So there's your 6 Ps: purpose, plan, participants, preparation, performance, and prize. Monitor each one, prepare for each one, and it really adds much more structure and effectiveness to meetings.
So, well, thank you for covering that, because it's one of those where, while you're going through it, and sometimes it's something that I practice is it's more of a feedback to the person talking that I'm listening. Sometimes I would repeat some of the words back. So that got me cautioning myself, like, oh, don't say that because I'm taking time that's not no longer valuable. So that's something that in my head as you were talking through it too.
I use this a lot, thankfully for Zoom. I'm a talker, right? I'm a trainer by nature, former performer. I was a singer-songwriter. I was a school teacher for 5 years, middle school teacher. I'm used to being in front of an audience. And a lot of us Agile coaches, we like to talk. So I belong to a center of excellence. And I noticed that we all like to talk, myself included. So I discipline myself now by using my Zoom thumbs up. Nice. If somebody says something really cool, why do I need to say it in my own words? Why don't I just thumbs up it? Yeah. Awesome. And that's where a facilitator would monitor for that and notice that somebody's saying the same thing. You got to be polite, but you got to stop them somehow and say, it sounds like you're saying da 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 da. Is that right? Yep. Good. Now that person feels heard. A lot of times people just want to be heard, but the way they do it wastes meeting time. So a good facilitator is listening to everyone and echoing back to the group what some of its conclusions are along the way. It sounds like you're all saying this, or I'm hearing a lot of alignment on this. And then you'll get the head nods. And that allows the quiet people to do their little thumbs up that they didn't do on their own is, yeah, I did like that idea. Nice. Or you could do fist fives. How many people think this is the right direction to go? A facilitator is going to help the group see itself in the mirror by repeating or noting what some of those patterns are that are emerging, because what will happen is people will get tactical and forget that they agreed to something 20 minutes earlier in a 2-hour meeting. So somebody needs to be capturing along the way what some of those convergence points are to avoid rehashing them or diverging. I thought we all agreed to da-da-da. Oh, yeah, you're right, we did. See, that kind of thing, that's what a facilitator does. And I would say that a Scrum Master has the potential to be a brilliant facilitator and should dig into that discipline. And the efficiency of a team will skyrocket, because when you consider the Scrum ceremonies and how much time they consume, if those are not really effective and efficient meetings, that's hours wasted every sprint.
Well, thank you, Tony, for sharing that with us. It has been very valuable. I'm walking away from this conversation with additional tips for me to facilitate and to get better at what I do. So once again, thank you very much.
You're very welcome, Richard. Great talking to you.